was recently attacked, one of several targeted since the killing of 4 Israelis on Tuesday.
According to the accounts we have received from numerous sources, indeed, a group of settlers, many settlers came here. I would call them terrorist settlers because they spread terror in the vicinity and in the neighborhood here by shooting with live rounds at fire at Palestinians, wounding 12 people, killing Omar Jabara, and also setting several houses and cars on fire. Luckily, not many more were actually injured, and nobody was killed apart from Omar, who, as I said, tried to save the lives of those injured.
More Israeli condemnation has come from the UN's human rights chief. Volker Turk says Israel's occupation is the root cause of the violence and is warning that the situation risks spiraling out of control. The Israeli government has approved further expansion of illegal settlements. Pledging additional support for settlements, Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir is urging what he calls a large-scale military operation. Well, we have two teams covering these developments. Imran Khan is standing by in occupied East Jerusalem. But first, let's cross to live now to Harry Fawcett, who's in Ramallah for us. And Harry, what are the likely consequences then of these kind of remarks for Palestinians on the ground?
Well, these were very strong remarks coming from the EU representative, but it was an extremely large-scale attack on this village on Wednesday. And the complaint from Palestinians over many years has been that the international community should do more than speak in very strong terms, that it needs to take more action. And I'm sure that some will be feeling that way again after this. However, I suppose the best that could be hoped for would be some kind of influence behind the scenes, some kind of pressure put on the Israeli government. Certainly there has been condemnation from some on the Israeli side as well about this, not least from the Israeli army, of the actions of the settlers on Wednesday. But it's only one of many such attacks. It's the most it's the largest scale that we've seen in recent days, but there have been a mushrooming of these sorts of attacks since the shooting attack by Palestinians on settlers on Tuesday afternoon, in which 4 settlers were killed. And what's also been clear and has been reported by locals in this incident and others, that as far as they're concerned, the Israeli army does not come in to intervene or protect them. In fact, the person who was killed in Tumrusaya on Wednesday, locals say he was shot by an Israeli soldier, not by one of the armed settlers. So there is a huge amount of tension. There's been a lot of violence already this year. It's been accelerated.
So these people decide to invade Palestine, right? Take over these people's land, put them in, it's just like America. It's the same blueprint, right? Put these people in refugee camps and so-called reservations, right? And basically refuse them all human rights. And then when they try to fight back, you know what I mean, you say, well, these people are terrorists. I mean, it's the same blueprint all over the world. You know what I'm saying? These were the people that helped bring slavery through the transatlantic slave trade, make no mistake, right? Judah P. Benjamin comes to mind. Look that up if you don't know who that is. And so now you have basically a civil war breaking out in Israel, right? Israel-Palestine, right? You got a civil war breaking out. And it's going to be the same everywhere between the Arabs and the Israelis, right? So because you got people coming from New York and from Russia and from Ukraine, and they all coming there and just having a free-for-all, taking these people's land and just setting up houses, and then they're bringing in the Israeli Defense Forces to shoot the people when they object and they start fighting back. And you have these so-called settlers, right? That is, I don't understand how. What do you mean settlers? These are land thieves, right? Sanctioned by the whole world, right? And But it's the same thing all over the world, right? And now it's getting so bad that the EU says, well, this is, they're launching terrorist attacks, right? So you got people coming in, taking their land, backed up by the government, right? Straight up Nazism, right? Basically white people, right? So you have these white people coming in from Europe and America, taking these people's land, shooting them when they object, then the people shooting back, and then the government comes in and then shoots the Arabs who are fighting, the people that are attacking them and taking their land. So they're backed by the government. I mean, it's straight up Nazism, right? And no one, all they can do is say, well, we condemn taking people's land. We're not going to sanction them like we did the Russians in Ukraine said they was taking land. We're not going to sanction them, right? We're going to say, well, that's not right. You know what I mean? We can't say, we can't watch you kill people and steal their land and say, it's cool. So we got to say, well, that's not right. That's not a good thing. But you're not going to do anything. You're not going to sanction anybody. No, we're not. Oh, okay. Right, so it doesn't really mean anything. And so basically now what you have is a civil war, a civil war spiraling out of control, right? Where, because see, I knew this was going to happen. I've been watching this shit for years, for decades, and I knew it was going to come to a point where the people were going to realize they were going to get no help really from the outside, and that they were on their own, and then they were going to have to make a last stand. And that's what it has come to in Palestine, Israel. The Arabs that live there are making their last stand. Because they made people so desperate, and nobody has helped. There's no change, it's just getting worse. And they made people very desperate, right? To the point where they're willing to say, fuck it, better to die than to be an ass-kissing slave. You see? And so all the young people now are taking up arms and saying, well, we're just going to strike back. They strike, so now you got a civil war amongst the population, right? Because they tried to ethnically cleanse all of the Arabs that lived there. But they decided to fight back at this point in the game. And they know no one's going to come help them, so they're on their own. So they, so now you have basically a civil war going on between the population, where one part of the white Jewish population is doing strikes, is coming in, burning, and shooting up one population, and then you have the Arabs going back and doing the same thing, right? And then you have the government on the side of the white Jewish people come in and attack the Arabs. I mean, this shit is straight up Nazism, right? Straight up fascist Nazism. You know what I mean? And nobody's, now you have people coming in from the EU saying, listen, we got to put a stop to this. You know what I'm saying? But it's a sign of the times. It's just too late, right? It's way too late for that. Them people know that nothing's going to change. It's only going to get worse. And if they don't fight now, they're going to lose everything, right? They're going to ethnically cleanse them. And so that's the same situation. I mean, you can look at the situation in Russia, Ukraine. The difference is the Russians have nuclear weapons. And they were like, yeah, listen, y'all not going to push up into our territory. We'll start fighting. They started fighting in Ukraine. They say, listen, you're not going to change. We're not going to allow you to come through Ukraine and launch a war to our country, and then regime change our country and start putting up, rainbow flags and telling us what to do. We're not having it, and whatever. So they launched it, what I mean? So it's the same thing everywhere you go, right? Whether it's Palestine, whether it's Russia, right, Ukraine, Whether it's, no matter where you go, it's the same blueprint. You see, and it's just a sign of the time. So that's going to escalate. I mean, basically, we're in a state of world war, right? Because those people are going to keep going, and then at the same time, you have them, basically a intense civil war amongst the people, backed by the government waging war on the Arabs in Palestine. You have the Israeli government bombing, surrounding countries like Syria on a regular basis, right? And then you got the Russians have a base in Syria. So anyway, I'm gonna end on this, but I'm gonna end with there's a prophecy by a guy. They said he's a false prophet, but not false prophet. He wasn't a prophet. He wasn't religious. I don't like using that word, but his name was Cairo. I think I got a video of him on my page, and he said that he was a psychic, not a prophet. It was no religious connotation, but he was a psychic. His name was Cairo, and he said, from Ireland, he said that the Russians, there was going to be a war, and he said this during World War II, so he wasn't talking about World War II. And he said that there was going to be a war, a huge war, coming in the future. And he predicted that the Russians would strike Israel, right? He said they would strike Israel and London first. I think Israel, London, Germany, something like that, right? And they would be destroyed, right? That the Russians were gonna basically back, I guess, the Arabs, and then which you can see happening because the Russians have their only base in the Middle East is in an Arab country, Syria, right next to Israel. So you can see that unfolding now with the basically, it's a war, and you're looking at war in Israel, right? It's going to be backed by the Arabs and the Russians, right, against the synagogue of Satan, Revelations 2:9, right? And then you can just see how it's kind of panning out, how it's spreading out. Everything's kind of laying itself out. So Cairo looks like he's going to be correct eventually, and I think what you're going to see is tactical nukes being used, not like full-scale nukes, but you're going to see like that war in Israel going to expand. They're not going to stop fighting. It's too late now for the Palestinians. They already know that they're going to be ethnic cleansed, so they're going to it's like a scared a cornered rat. You know what I mean? They're just going to fight. There's no way out of that, right? And they got a spirit of resistance. They're not like the Negro in America and shit like that. They got a spirit of armed resistance. So that shit is gonna spiral out of control into a full-fledged from like a civil war, from it's basically a race war. I mean, you look at the Arabs and the white people coming in from Europe on the Israeli white Jews. Basically a race war at a certain level. But you're looking at that whole thing going to spiral between Syria and then the disgruntled people of Palestine, Jordanians, Egyptians, etc. So you're going to see a full-fledged war spark up there, backed by the Russians with the base, I think it's called Tartus, in Syria. Eventually probably backing the Arabs and the Iranians, and they're going to launch strikes, probably tactical nukes on Israel. And he predicted they would win, like they would destroy the Israeli government. The IDF, the Israeli government, is going to be destroyed and overrun, and they're going to wind up retaking that area back by the Russians and the Iranians. And you're going to see, and he said that also, Cairo's, the psychic said you're going to see strikes on London, and I believe he said Germany, somewhere like London, Poland, Germany, something like that. But the London strikes make sense. The reason why I thought that was interesting was today you saw strikes on the Crimean Bridge, and the Russians took note of it, and they said these strikes were done with British Storm Shadow missiles, which was supplied by England, the UK. They're gonna get tired of that, and so it makes sense what Cairo said, right? in the 19, I think it was like early 1940s, right around the end of World War II or during around World War II. What he said it's starting to make sense. Where he said that you're gonna see strikes on in Israel by Russia and London, and you're gonna see like World War III basically. Kind of the way he said that World War III was going to unfold. It's actually unfolding that the way that he said, and so it's funny that people said that he was a charlatan and a hoaxer because everything he's saying is kind of coming true. Also, he said that the so-called Israelis, Jewish people, were going to go into Palestine and take land because of gas and oil. If you look at it, that's all they've been doing in the past like 2 years, past 2 to 5 years. They've been taking the land from the Palestinians, and they've been making oil and gas deals on their land, right? So he was right about that too. So it's funny that people say, you can read articles where they say this guy was he was a charlatan, he was a false psychic, but almost everything he said so far is coming true as far as that conflict, right? So I just thought that was interesting while I was watching this, and it looks like it's going to unfold just the way he said it was going to unfold. So, but anyway, that's all I got.